Hello everyone, my name is Neetu Dalal. Welcome back to my YouTube channel called Edu Classes, where we watch, learn, and excel. Today we will be covering chapter 7, part 3. We've already covered part 1 and part 2, and the videos of the same have already been uploaded. So, in today's video, we are going to cover chapter 7, part 3 of social influence and group processes. So we've already covered till conformity, compliance, and obedience. And in this part, we will begin with cooperation and competition. And we will cover the topics of Sheriff Summer Camp experiment, determinants of cooperation and competition, social identity, intergroup conflict, nature and causes, conflict resolution strategy. So these are some of the topics we will talk about in this particular chapter, in this particular part. So without wasting any time, let's begin. Now, cooperation and competition. People interact with each other in different contexts. Behavior in most social situations are characterized by either cooperation or competition. So you will see, whenever we meet somebody else, right, we always meet in some social setting or some social context, है ना? तो जब भी ऐसी social situation होती है, दो तरह की चीजें होती हैं. या तो cooperation होता है उनके बीच में, harmony होती है, या फिर competition होता है या conflict होता है, right? So if there are two groups, there can either be cooperation between those two groups or there can be competition between those two groups. When groups work together to achieve shared goals, we refer to as cooperation. We all know what cooperation means. जब आप मिलजुल के काम करते हैं एंड कोई कॉमन गोल अचीव करने की कोशिश करते हैं, इस प्रोसेस को हम कॉपरेशन कहते हैं. The rewards in cooperative situation are group rewards and not individual reward. अमूमन ये ऐसी सिचुएशन होती है जहां पे अगर आप लोग अच्छा परफॉर्म करेंगे तो पूरे ग्रुप को रिवॉर्ड मिलता है, ना कि सिर्फ इंडिविजुअल को. However, when members try to maximize their own profit and work for the realization of self-interest, competition is likely to result. जब इंसान या जब इंडिविजुअल अपने फायदे या सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट के प्रति काम करने लग जाता है, तो ऐसा माहौल डेवलप होता है जहां पे कंपटीशन ज्यादा उभर कर सामने आता है, ना कि कॉपरेशन. राइट नाउ सोशल ग्रुप्स में कंपटीशन भी हो सकता है, कॉपरेशन भी हो सकता है, एंड दिस ऑल डिपेंड्स ऑन गोल्स. राइट competitive goals are set in such a way that each individual can get his or her goal only if others do not attain their goals. Right? Competitive goals मतलब कॉम्पिटिटिव गोल्स इस तरीके से सेट किए जाते हैं कि अगर आप अपना गोल तभी अचीव कर पाओगे जब कोई और अचीव नहीं करेगा. लाइक इफ आई वांट टू कम फर्स्ट इन द क्लास, आई कैन ओनली अचीव दिस इफ nobody else comes first and only I come first, meaning that I have to surpass all of them and then get a percentage which leaves all of them behind. So this is a competitive goal. It's not something we can all share together, right? Until unless, of course, there are two people who have the exact same percentage, but that's very rare. So here they've given the example, you can come first in a competition only if others do not perform to such a level that they can be judged as first, right? So they've kind of given a similar example to what we've discussed. On the other hand, a cooperative goal is one in which each individual can attain the goal only if other members of the group also attain the goal. कोऑपरेटिव गोल्स कुछ इस तरीके से सेट किए जाते हैं कि आप अपना इंडिविजुअल ग्रुप गोल तभी पूरा कर पाओगे जब ग्रुप का भी गोल या जो बाकी लोग हैं ग्रुप के उनका भी अपना गोल अचीव हो. जैसे अगर आप क्रिकेट में देखो तो आप तभी जीतते हो जब आपकी पूरी टीम भी जीतती है, राइट? तो ये कोऑपरेटिव गोल है क्योंकि आपको रल मिलके या आपको with harmony you have to do things in a manner where all the members get something and they all win. Now Dush investigated cooperation and competition within groups. So this was an experimenter who investigated or who was interested in researching कि cooperation और competition कैसा phenomena है and how does it work within groups. College students were assigned to groups of 5 persons and were required to solve puzzles and problems. तो उन्होंने कॉलेज स्टूडेंट्स को 5-5 के ग्रुप में बांटा और उनको पजल सॉल्व करना है और प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करनी है, राइट? One set of group referred to as cooperative group were told that they would be rewarded collectively for their performance. एक ग्रुप को इन्होंने कोऑपरेटिव ग्रुप कह दिया जिनको ये बताया गया कि आप लोग को तभी रिवॉर्ड मिलेगा जब आप लोग की सारी की परफॉर्मेंस अच्छी होगी, कलेक्टिवली अच्छी होगी सारे ग्रुप की. The other set of group labeled as competitive group were told that there was a reward for individual excellence. Second group को उन्होंने बोला कि इंडिविजुअल को ग्रुप को रिवॉर्ड मिलेगा, ना कि एज अ ग्रुप. सो जो भी इंडिविजुअल एक्सेल करेगा, दैट पर्सन विल बी रिवॉर्डेड. Results showed that in cooperative groups there was more coordination, there was acceptance for each other's ideas, and members were more friendly than in the competitive group. तो ऑफ कोर्स क्या पाया गया कि ऐसा ग्रुप जिसे बताया गया था कि आप लोग की कलेक्टिव परफॉर्मेंस इवैल्यूएट होगी और कलेक्टिव रिवॉर्ड मिलेगा, उनके बीच में ज्यादा कॉपरेशन, ज्यादा एक्सेप्टेंस, ओपन टू आइडियाज ज्यादा मिला इन कंपैरिजन टू, एंड दे वर आल्सो मोर फ्रेंडली टुवर्ड्स ईच अदर इन कंपैरिजन टू द कॉम्पिटिटिव ग्रुप, जहां पे इंडिविजुअल को हम उसकी परफॉर्मेंस के लिए रिवॉर्ड करते थे. The main concern of the members of the cooperative group was to see the main concern of the member of the cooperative group was to see that the group excel. तो जो cooperative group है उनका एकमात्र ही गोल बन जाता है कि उन्हें ग्रुप को एक्सेल कराना है या ग्रुप को सक्सीड कराना है, राइट? They don't focus on that they solely want to succeed. Of course, when they will contribute, then only the group will also win. But their goal, the goal of the group becomes higher than their own goals, right? Now, although competition between individuals within a group may result in conflict and disharmony, competition between groups may increase within group cohesion and solidarity. अब जैसे इन लोगों या इंडिविजुअल के बीच का कंपटीशन ग्रुप के में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट और डिसहार्मनी बनाता है, राइट? अगर एक ग्रुप के अंदर ही कंपटीशन है तो दैट इज बैड फॉर द ग्रुप. पर अगर दो ग्रुप डिफरेंट ग्रुप्स के बीच में कंपटीशन है तो वो ग्रुप के अंदर, दोनों ग्रुप के अंदर कोहेजन और सॉलिडारिटी यानी हार्मनी और एकता की जो भावना होती है उसे बढ़ाता है, राइट? So in Prisoner's Dilemma game, this is a very popular experiment which has been done, and even if you guys search online on Google, you guys will be able to read what was Prisoner's Dilemma game. This is also very beautifully given in the NCERT, right? So we will briefly discuss what this says. In Prisoner's Dilemma game, which is a two-person game in which both parties are faced with competition or cooperation, and depending upon their choices, both can win or lose, is often used to study cooperation and competition. So prisoner dilemma game एक ऐसा गेम है जिसे हम अमूमन cooperation या competition का टॉपिक समझने के लिए इस्तेमाल करते हैं. This game is based on an anecdote. Two suspects were quizzed by detectives separately. The detectives had only enough evidence to convict them for a small offense. हो क्या रहा है इस गेम में? दो ऐसे लोग हैं जिन्हें सस्पेक्ट मान रही है पुलिस और उन्हें इंडिविजुअली quiz कर रही है, right? So the police is investigating them. The detectives had only enough evidence to convict them for a small offense. So पुलिस के पास ज्यादा प्रूफ नहीं है, उनके पास सिर्फ इतना ही प्रूफ है कि वो उसे छोटे मोटे ऑफेंस में बुक कर सकती है. Separately, the two convicts were offered a chance to confess. तो आपने ऐसे मूवीज में भी देखा होगा कि पुलिस हमेशा ऐसे बोलता है कि अभी कन्फेस कर दो and we will let you go, है ना? You confess who has done it and then I will let you pass. So here, separately, they were given a chance. Agar one confesses and the other does not, the one who confesses will get no punishment and his or her confession will be used to convict the other with a serious offense. So अगर एक इंसान ने confess कर दिया तो उसे जाने दिया जाएगा, पर उसका confession use करके जो दूसरा इंसान है उस पे ज्यादा serious offense लग जाएगा, right? If both confesses, अगर दोनों confess कर लेते हैं, the punishment to both will be mild. तो दोनों की punishment कम होगी. अगर कोई कन्फेस नहीं करता है तो ईच विल रिसीव अ लाइट सेंटेंस. अगर दोनों ही कन्फेस नहीं करते हैं तो दोनों को मामूली सी सजा मिलेगी बिकॉज उनके पास ज्यादा प्रूफ नहीं है. This game has been used in hundreds of experiments to demonstrate that when two parties are involved, there is a conflict between motive to cooperate and motive to compete. So जब दो parties involved होती हैं, how do they, how their conflict changes for cooperation and competition has been explored and has been researched by using this particular game. So this is what we know as prisoner's dilemma. Dilemma is basically a state of mind where you're confused what you should choose, right? So the prisoner's dilemma, yani the prisoner's confusion to choose whether he should cooperate or, let confess against the other person is what is used here. So therefore the name prisoner's dilemma game. So for example, there are two players A and B. Let's say that there are two players, one is A and one is B. If both cooperate, both get 3 points each, right? So if you look at this figure, this is player A, this is player B. अगर ये दोनों cooperate करेंगे तो इन्हें कितने points मिल रहे हैं? 3 each, right? If player A competes and wins, she gets 5 points and B gets 0. अगर A compete करती है और B cooperate कर रहा है, यानी अगर A confess कर देता है और B cooperate कर रहा था, तो A को सारे points मिल जाएंगे और B को 0. Similarly, if B competes and wins, she gets 5 points and A gets 0, right? So B was competing and A was cooperating. If both A and B compete, both get 2 points each. तो दोनों को एक एक कम पर दोनों को 2 points मिल जाते हैं. So this is competition where both of them are competing. So this is a kind of a chart which shows cooperation versus competition. Now we come to what determines or what decides whether there will be cooperation or competition, right? What factors determine कि लोग cooperate करेंगे या compete करेंगे? तो कुछ ऐसे important factors या कुछ ऐसे important determinants की हम यहाँ बात करेंगे. पहला जो बहुत important factor है, that is reward structure, है ना? आपको क्या मिल रहा है? Like what are you getting out of it? Psychologists believe that whether people will cooperate or compete will depend on the reward structure. Now, this is very true. अगर आप compete करते हो या आप cooperate करोगे, वो क्या reward में मिल रहा है उस पर depend करेगा. Suppose if somebody says, you know, कि आप अपने friend को frame कर दो, I will give you, let's say 10,000. You might say no. You might not cooperate, right? You might say no, 10,000 or this is not a big amount for me. But if the amount becomes 10 crore, right? So as the reward changes, so does your motive changes. So cooperative reward structure is one in which there is promotive interdependence. Each is beneficiary of the reward and reward is possible only if all contribute. Cooperative reward structure हम उस situation को कहते हैं जहां जब पूरी टीम जीतेगी तभी individual players को कोई रिवॉर्ड मिलेगा. सो समथिंग अ सिमिलर सेटअप इज नोन एज कोऑपरेटिव रिवॉर्ड स्ट्रक्चर. अगर टीम नहीं जीती तो किसी को कुछ नहीं मिलेगा, राइट? सो इफ कोऑपरेटिव रिवॉर्ड स्ट्रक्चर, द मोटिव इज दैट द होल टीम शुड विन सो दैट at least everybody gets something, है ना? A competitive reward structure is one in which one can get a reward only if others do not get it. कॉम्पिटिटिव रिवॉर्ड स्ट्रक्चर क्या हो जाएगा कि जो सिर्फ क्लास में फर्स्ट आएगा उसे ही ये प्राइज मिलेगा. सो यू विल ओनली गेट द रिवॉर्ड इफ यू डिफीट एवरीबडी एल्स. सो दीज आर द टू काइंड ऑफ रिवॉर्ड स्ट्रक्चर एंड डिपेंडिंग ऑन विच रिवॉर्ड स्ट्रक्चर एग्जिस्ट, वेदर आइदर यू विल कॉपरेट और यू विल कम्पीट. अगर कॉपरेटिव रिवॉर्ड स्ट्रक्चर है तो आप कॉपरेट करोगे. अगर कॉम्पिटिटिव रिवॉर्ड स्ट्रक्चर है तो यू विल कम्पीट एंड यू विल फाइट फॉर योर ओन इंडिविजुअल सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट. Then is interpersonal communication. When there is good interpersonal communication, then cooperation is likely consequence. जब ग्रुप के लोगों के बीच में अच्छा कम्युनिकेशन है, they understand each other, they know each other very well, then most likely क्या होगा that there will be cooperation. Communication facilitates interaction and discussion. So of course, when you know the other person or when you know the people of the group, you will discuss, you will communicate. As a result, group members can convince each other and learn about each other, right? So you have a pathway where you can discuss things and therefore you will more likely fall towards cooperation. Third factor which determines whether there will be competition or there will be cooperation is reciprocity. Reciprocity basically means कि किसी ने आपकी हेल्प की तो क्या आप भी उसकी हेल्प करोगे. This is reciprocal, right? So that is where the term comes from and that is what it means. So reciprocity means that people feel obliged to return in what they get. So you know how in Indian culture अगर कोई हमें कुछ देके जाता है, suppose plate में, या you know they offer us something in a plate, so we never return the plate empty. हमें we also feel obliged कि हमें भी खाली plate नहीं देनी है. We also give something in return. That is also an example of reciprocity. Somebody gave you food. You are not returning the plate empty. You are also returning the plate with some delicacies in it. Initial cooperation may encourage more cooperation. अगर आपने किसी के साथ cooperate कर दिया, हो सकता है this will encourage the other person also to cooperate with you, right? And अगर आपने किसी के साथ compete कर लिया, तो of course the other person will also be, you know, encouraged to compete with you. So if someone helps, you feel like helping that person. On the other hand, if someone refuses to help you when you need help, you would not like to help that person also. Sometimes they are really stuck and we can't really help the person. But agar if it's a friend who has helped you pehle, आपको obliged feel होता है and you feel that no, you have to help this person out, and that is a feeling of reciprocity. अगर इंसान ने आपकी पहले मदद नहीं की होती तो हो सकता है you would have not gone out of your way to help the person, but because he had helped you, therefore you helped the person. So the next topic is social identity. Have you ever asked the question, who am I? What was your answer to this question? Right? So, sometimes we do think and we try to answer the question that who am I? मैं कौन हूँ? Right? And आपका जो भी आंसर होता है इस क्वेश्चन में वो कहीं ना कहीं आपको डिफाइन करता है. Right? So probably आपका आंसर कैसा हो सकता है? That you are a hardworking, happy-go-lucky girl or a boy. This could be your answer. This answer tells you about your social identity, which wants self-definition of who or she is. तो हमारी social identity क्या होती है जो हम adjectives use करते हैं अपने आप को define करने के लिए. For example, if I say that I feel I'm hardworking, I'm dedicated, I'm diligent, I'm resourceful, all of this could be my social identity. This self-definition may include both personal attributes, right? यानी ये आपके पर्सनल एट्रीब्यूट्स भी इंक्लूड कर सकता है, जैसे हार्ड वर्किंग हो गया, हैप्पी गो लकी हो गया, और एट्रीब्यूट्स व्हिच यू शेयर विद अदर. ऐसे भी एट्रीब्यूट्स हो सकते हैं जो आप किसी और के साथ शेयर करते हो, जैसे यू आर अ गर्ल और यू आर अ हिंदू or you're a Muslim or you are from this particular state. All these are attributes that you share with a lot of other people as well, right? So although some aspects of our identity are determined by physical characteristics, we may acquire other aspects as a consequence of our interaction with others. बहुत ऐसे characteristics होते हैं हमारी social identity के जो किस चीज से determine होते हैं कि हम कैसे दिखते हैं, right? What kind of hair do we have? What kind of features do we have? How tall are we? So some are like that. Others are the ones which we get once we interact with other people, right? Sometimes we perceive ourselves as unique individuals, and at other times we perceive ourselves as members of group. कई बार हमें ऐसा लगता है that we are very unique or we are very different. Sometimes we feel that no, we are a part of this particular group. Now both are extremely valid expressions. दोनों ही सही हैं. कई बार आप अपने आप को ग्रुप से अलग करके देखते हो, कई बार आप अपने आप को किसी एक ग्रुप का हिस्सा मानकर देखते हो. Our personal identity is derived from views of oneself as a unique individual. तो जो हमारी पर्सनल आइडेंटिटी है वो वहां से आती है जब हम अपने आप को एज यूनिक देखते हैं, और हमारी सोशल आइडेंटिटी वहां से आती है जब हम अपने आप को किसी ग्रुप का हिस्सा देखते हैं, राइट? सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ आई से आई एम एन इंडियन, दैट विल बी माई सोशल आइडेंटिटी, क्योंकि मैं अपने आप को एक ऐसे ग्रुप से एसोसिएट कर रही हूँ जो किसी एक जगह रहता है. और इफ आई से आई एम अ हिंदू, this is also my social identity. My surname is also my social identity, right? So therefore this all becomes a part of your social identity, whereas your personal traits become a part of your personal identity. This we've also covered in a few previous chapters, right? So then the extent to which we define ourselves either at personal or at social level is flexible. अब ये बहुत फ्लेक्सिबल बात है. हो सकता है कोई ज्यादातर अपने आप को पर्सनल आइडेंटिटी के हिसाब से समझता हो, राइट? उसका सोशल आइडेंटिटी उतना प्रोमिनेंट ना हो सकता है किसी का सोशल आइडेंटिटी बहुत प्रोमिनेंट हो और पर्सनल आइडेंटिटी प्रोमिनेंट ना हो. तो 100% में से हो सकता है किसी का, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, पर्सनल आइडेंटिटी 80% हो और सोशल सिर्फ 20%, और किसी का उल्टा भी हो सकता है. तो हो सकता है कोई इंसान सिर्फ पर्सनल आइडेंटिटी में अपने आप को 20% ही देखता है और 80% सोशल आइडेंटिटी से रिलेट करता है. From your own experience, you would realize that identification with some social group can have a great deal of importance for your self-concept. Now, we all agree, depending on which school you go to, which institutes you went to, a lot of people take a lot of pride, in which institution they were a part of. That also forms a very important aspect of their self-concept, right? Social identity is that aspect of a self-concept which is based on a group membership. लाइक आई सेड, आप किस ग्रुप से एसोसिएट करते हो ये आपका सोशल आइडेंटिटी डिटरमाइन करता है। अब क्यों सोशल आइडेंटिटी इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट है? बिकॉज दिस समवेयर प्लेसेस अस इन द वर्ल्ड और इन द सोसाइटी. If I go abroad and somebody asks me, where are you from? And I tell them I'm from India, this identity gives them a place to map me on this world, right? And this is what tells them more about me, right? Similarly, in India, if people ask you your last name or your surname, what are they trying to do? They are trying to place you somewhere. Which caste are you from? Which state are you from? Right? And they will also conclude a few things about the community you belong to. So therefore, social identity has always been used and is still used to kind of place you or see where you belong from. Social identity provides members with a shared set of values, beliefs, and goals about themselves and about their social world. Also, social identity helps you categorize people into different categories. So if I ask them, which religion are you from? And if somebody tells me that they're Christian, I will immediately know what kind of rituals they follow, what kind of traditions, what kind of festivals they celebrate. So that also helps me, right, to understand the person better. And this tells me a viewpoint or gives me a window into their life, like what kind of beliefs, what kind of values they will possess. So that is similarly for somebody else from my social identity, they will also be able to do the same. So that is what social identity helps you with. When we develop a strong identity with our own group, the categorization as in group and out group becomes salient. Now, one drawback or one disadvantage of having a very strong social identity is कि आप फिर इन ग्रुप और आउट ग्रुप का आपका कैटेगराइजेशन बहुत स्ट्रांग हो जाता है कि ये हमारे ग्रुप के लोग हैं, ये उस ग्रुप के लोग हैं. और अगर आपके दिमाग में कोई प्रेजुडिस है तो फिर ये कंपटीशन की भावना या कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बढ़ा सकता है, राइट? The group with which you identify yourself becomes the in group and others become the out group. This, like we have already discussed in this chapter prior also, कि जिस भी ग्रुप का आप अपने आप को हिस्सा समझते हैं वो इन ग्रुप कहलाता है और जिस ग्रुप का आप अपने आप को हिस्सा नहीं समझते हैं वो आउट ग्रुप कहलाता है. The negative aspect of this own group and out group categorization is that we start showing favoritism towards our in group by rating it more favorably in comparison to the out group and begin devaluating the out group. So एक कहीं ना कहीं एक sense of मेरा ग्रुप उनका ग्रुप वाली फीलिंग स्टार्ट हो जाती है where you favor your group. आप अपने ग्रुप का साथ ज्यादा देते हैं, उन्हें ज्यादा फेवर करते हैं, as of course when you get the opportunity, or you try to kind of portray in communication or conversation subtle cues that your group is the superior one. And this is not good for humans in general. Why? Because this increases conflict rather than peace. So this devaluation of the outgroup is the basis of a number of intergroup conflicts. और इसी वजह से ना जाने कितने दंगे, कितने फसाद होते हैं. Because how does it all start? It starts with people believing that they are very different, right? Now, with this, we come to the next topic, which is very relevant, which is intergroup conflict, right? So what do we mean by intergroup conflict? What is the nature and what are some of the causes? Conflict hota kya hai? Conflict is a process in which either an individual or a group perceives that other have opposing interests and both try to contradict each other. Conflict आम भाषा में होती है लड़ाई, राइट? आपका भाई से कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो गया, किसी ओपिनियन पे आपका और उसका व्यू पॉइंट मैच नहीं हुआ, दैट इज ऑल्सो अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. जब हम थोड़े बड़े स्केल पे इसकी बात करते हैं, ग्रुप्स के बीच में, रिलीजन्स के बीच में, देशों के बीच में जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होता है वो भी इंटरग्रुप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है. ऐसी कोई भी लड़ाई या ऐसा कोई भी मुद्दा जो दो ग्रुप्स के बीच में है उसे हम इंटरग्रुप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट कहेंगे. यहाँ पे होता क्या है, आपको ऐसा लगता है कि आपके और उसके ग्रुप का ऑपोजिंग इंटरेस्ट है एंड दोनों एक दूसरे को कॉन्ट्राडिक्ट करने की कोशिश करते हैं. पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज का भी इज और इंटरग्रुप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. सो कांग्रेस वर्सेस बीजेपी, intergroup conflict, because they are fighting for the same thing and they have opposing interest. Now there is this intense feeling of we and other. This becomes very prominent, when there is intergroup conflict, कि हम और वो, ये बहुत significant हो जाता है, right? And there is also a belief by both parties that the other will protest only its own interest, protect its own interest. Their interest will therefore not be protected. बहुत लोगों को ऐसा लगता है कि अगर इंटरग्रुप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है तो जो दूसरे लोग हैं वो सिर्फ अपना फायदा देखेंगे और हमारे फायदे में कोई नहीं सोचेगा. इसीलिए so many times these intergroup conflicts become so huge, right? There is not only opposition of each other, but they also try to exert power on each other. ना एक दूसरे का सिर्फ ऑपोजिशन ही नहीं होता है, एक दूसरे पर भावी होने की भी कोशिश की जाती है इंटरग्रुप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में कि हम बेहतर है, हम बेहतर है. Groups have been found to be more aggressive than individuals. हमेशा ऐसा पाया गया है कि जब एक ग्रुप होता है उसमें aggressive nature ज्यादा होता है in comparison to when it is one individual against other individual. This often leads to escalation of conflict. All conflicts are costly as there is a human price for them. फिर अगर aggressive ज्यादा है तो क्या होगा? Conflict बढ़ेगा. एंड ऑफ कोर्स हर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, चाहे वो कितनी भी छोटी से छोटी लड़ाई हो या कितनी बड़ी से बड़ी लड़ाई हो, उसका हमेशा एक प्राइस होता है, हमेशा एक कॉस्ट होती है. कई बार वो कॉस्ट किसी इंसान की जिंदगी होती है, कई बार दैट कॉस्ट इज इन अमाउंट्स ऑफ मनी. इन वॉर्स देयर आर बोथ विक्ट्रीज एंड डिफीट्स, but the human cost of war is far beyond all this. So of course somebody is winning and somebody is losing, but there is always a loss of life, and that is far greater than who has won and who has lost. So various types of conflict are commonly seen in society, which turn out to be costly for both sides as well as for society, right? Now we see some of the major reasons for group conflict. अगर अब इतनी बड़ी cost है and we understand that intergroup conflicts are not good, then why do these conflicts happen, right? So one major reason is lack of communication and faulty communication by both parties. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि जिन दो ग्रुप्स के बीच में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है उनमें कोई कम्युनिकेशन ही नहीं है या गलत कम्युनिकेशन है. इट्स नॉट हेल्दी कम्युनिकेशन. This kind of communication leads to suspicion. That is, there is lack of trust, hence conflict results. जब आपकी किसी से बातचीत ही नहीं है या फिर गलत बातचीत है, तब आपको वहां पे कुछ ना कुछ सस्पिशन होगा और आप उन्हें एक तरह से सस्पिशियस निगाहों से या डाउट की निगाहों से देखोगे. और ऑफ कोर्स lack of trust होगा and that will lead to conflict. Another reason for intergroup conflict is relative deprivation. Now this is something which is very important. Relative deprivation का मतलब होता है कि आपको ऐसा लगता है कि कोई चीज बहुत लिमिटेड है. Let's say there is 50 jobs in the market. आप ऑलरेडी अनएम्प्लॉयड हो और आपको ऐसा लगता है कि इतने सारे और लोग हैं, इफ यू आर इंडियन लेट्स से, एंड बाकी भी इमिग्रेंट्स आ रहे हैं, है ना. लेट्स से दैट पीपल फ्रॉम अदर कंट्रीज आर कमिंग टू योर कंट्री. सो यू फील दैट ऑलरेडी कोई चीज कम है, जॉब्स कम है, और जितनी जॉब्स हैं वो सारी ये ले जाते हैं. तो आपको ऐसा फील होता है कि ऑलरेडी आप डिप्राइव्ड थे एंड आप और डिप्राइव हो रहे हो बिकॉज ऑफ समबडी एल्स हु डजंट इवन बिलोंग हियर. दिस इज नोन एज relative deprivation. It arises when members of a group compare themselves with members of another group. जब आप अपना comparison किसी और ग्रुप के members से कर रहे हो and perceive that they do not have what they desire to have, which the other group has. फिर आप देखते हो कि आपके पास तो वो सब नहीं है जो उस ग्रुप के लोगों के पास है. This may lead to feeling, in other words, they feel that they are not doing well in comparison to other group. This may lead to feeling of deprivation and discontentment, which may trigger of conflict. So आपने अपना comparison दूसरे ग्रुप के लोगों के कंपैरिजन में किया, आपको ऐसा लगा कि आपके पास बहुत कम है और उनके पास बहुत ज्यादा. इससे क्या हुआ? आपने ये नहीं देखा कि वो कितनी मेहनत कर रहे हैं, आपने बस ये देखा कि आपके पास कितना है और उनके पास कितना है, और आपके पास कम था, उनके पास ज्यादा. आपको ऐसा लगा कि दे आर डूइंग मच बेटर देन यू, एंड ये दिस लीड्स टू डिप्रिवेशन की फीलिंग कि आपके पास आप डिप्राइव्ड हो या आपको वंचित रखा जा रहा है चीजों से, एंड डिसकंटेंटमेंट, जिसकी वजह से भी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट स्टार्ट हो जाता है. जैसे दिस इज द सेम रीजन बिटवीन पीपल हु आर रिच एंड हु आर पुअर, राइट. Another cause of conflict is one party's belief that it is better than the other and what it is saying should be done. Another reason है कि एक पार्टी को ये लगता है कि वो दूसरी पार्टी से बहुत बेहतर है और जो वो कह रहे हैं वही होना चाहिए, राइट. जब ऐसा होता है तो बोथ पार्टीज दे स्टार्ट अक्यूजिंग ईच अदर, वो दोनों एक दूसरे को ब्लेम करने लग जाती हैं. One may often witness a tendency to magnify even smaller differences. Thereby, conflicts get escalated because every member wants to respect the norm of his or her group. ऐसे मामलों में ज्यादातर ये पाया जाता है कि लोग डिफरेंसेस ज्यादा हाईलाइट करने लग जाते हैं और सिमिलैरिटीज निग्लेक्ट करने लग जाते हैं, क्योंकि the whole purpose or the whole thing they are trying to prove is that they are better than the others. So they try to catch every little possible thing that is there and try to prove that they are better. तो इस वजह से भी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट फिर और बढ़ता ही चला जाता है. A feeling that the other group does not respect the norm of my group and actually violates those norms because of a malevolent intent. बहुत बार ऐसा लगता है आपको कि कोई जो दूसरे ग्रुप का इंसान है वो आपके ग्रुप के जो नॉर्म्स हैं या जो रूल्स हैं या जो एथिक्स हैं उन्हें रिस्पेक्ट नहीं करता है और जानबूझकर आपके नॉर्म्स तोड़ता है या आपके वैल्यूज को डिफाई करता है क्योंकि उसकी कोई खराब इंटेंशन है. अगर आपको ये लगता है तो ये भी एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट का रीजन बन सकता है. This is mostly in the case of religion, right? Next determination or next reason why conflict exists is desire for retaliation for some harm done in the past could be another reason for conflict. यानी किसी ने आपका कुछ बुरा किया था पहले या किसी ने आपको कोई हार्म पहुंचाया था और आप उसके लिए रिटेलिएट करना चाहते हो या उसका बदला लेना चाहते हो. ये भी एक another reason है for conflict. And this you see a lot of times in villages and even outside in cities also you see that somebody did something to your family member. Now you also want to do it back to their family member, right? So that is another reason. Biased perception are at the root of most conflicts. यानी गलत perception या biased या फिर ये सोचना कि वो इंसान ऐसा है या prejudice होना is the root cause. ये जड़ बन जाता है बहुत सारे conflicts में. And of course जो ये भावना है कि हम उनसे बेहतर हैं और वो हमसे अच्छे नहीं हैं, ये biased perceptions को एक तरह से lead करता है. Research has shown that when acting in groups, people are more competitive as well as more aggressive than when they are on their own. We discussed this that जब आप अकेले होते हो आप कम competitive होते हो और कम aggressive होते हो. बट जब आप एक भीड़ का हिस्सा बन जाते हो तब या एक ग्रुप का हिस्सा बन जाते हो तब आप aggressive भी ज्यादा होते हो और आप competitive भी ज्यादा होते हो and you have more to prove to the group, you know. Groups compete over scarce resources, both material resource and that is money as well as social resource. So as a group you compete for both money, territory, whether it is land, it is money, as well as whether it is respect or esteem. And that is why you will see so many battles that were fought because of they wanted to acquire a new country or they wanted to acquire more money or somebody's ego was hurt. Another reason for conflict is perceived inequity is another reason. मतलब perceived inequality, आपको ऐसा लगे कि सबके पास बराबर की चीजें नहीं है, that is another reason why conflict happens. Equity refers to distribution of rewards in proportion to an individual's contribution, यानी fairness. आपको ऐसा लगे कि जो आपका रिवॉर्ड है वो आपके कंट्रीब्यूशन के बराबर का है, जितना आप कंट्रीब्यूट करते हो आपको उतना रिवॉर्ड मिलता है, तो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट नहीं होगा. पर अगर आपको ये लगता है कि जितना आप कंट्रीब्यूट करते हो उतना आपको रिवॉर्ड नहीं मिलता है और आपके फ्रेंड्स जितना कंट्रीब्यूट करते हैं उन्हें उससे ज्यादा मिलता है, देन दिस आल्सो विल बी अ रीजन फॉर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, राइट? Conflicts between group give impetus to a series of social and cognitive processes. जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होते हैं ग्रुप के बीच में वो बहुत सारे ऐसी प्रोसेसेस को जन्म देते हैं जो फिर और प्रॉब्लम्स बढ़ाती हैं. These processes harden the stand of each side, leading to intergroup polarization. होता ऐसा है कि जब ऐसी भावनाएं डेवलप हो जाती हैं तो फिर जो लोगों की मानसिकता है वो और ज्यादा एंटी होती जाती है दूसरे ग्रुप की तरफ. This may result in coalition formation of like-minded parties, thereby increasing the apprehension of both parties, resulting in misperception, unbiased interpretation and attribution. The result is increased conflict. फिर क्या होता है, आप ऐसे लोगों को ढूंढते हो जो आपके व्यू पॉइंट से एग्री करते हैं और वो आपके साथ जुड़ते जाते हैं. एंड सेम द अदर पार्टी विल आल्सो बी डूइंग. अगर जो दूसरा ग्रुप है उसको आपके व्यू पॉइंट से प्रॉब्लम है वो भी अपने लिए सपोर्ट इकट्ठा करेंगे अब जब लाइक माइंडेड लोग इकट्ठे हो गए दो तरफ, तो जब उनमें कॉन्फ्लिक्ट होगा तो ऑफ कोर्स इट विल बी अ मैसिव कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. Present day society is fraught with various intergroup conflicts. These are related to caste, class, religion, region, language, just to name a few. So these are some of the conflicts we have today in society. It is related to caste, class, religion, region, language. सब बहुत, these are all things which we can think example of. Gardner Murphy wrote a book entitled In the Minds of Men. Most conflicts begin in the minds of men and then go to the field. This is something which is very interesting. So Gardner said that ज्यादातर जो conflicts होते हैं वो इंसान के दिमाग में जन्म लेते हैं, and then only people go to battle. So once you think that there's a conflict in your mind, then only it converts into a war. Explanations of such conflicts can be at the structural, group and individual level. आप इन चीजों को तीन तरह पे समझ सकते हो, एक तो स्ट्रक्चर लेवल पे, ग्रुप लेवल पे और इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे. स्ट्रक्चरल लेवल पे कैसे समझ सकते हो? कुछ ऐसी स्ट्रक्चरल कंडीशंस हो सकती हैं जैसे हाई रेट ऑफ पॉवर्टी, इकोनॉमिक एंड सोशल स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन, बहुत ज्यादा विभाजित है सोसाइटी, बहुत ज्यादा इनइक्वालिटी है सोसाइटी में, लिमिटेड पॉलिटिकल एंड सोशल अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं. तो ये सोसाइटी का स्ट्रक्चर है जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को और ज्यादा प्रमोट कर रहा है या इनकरेज कर रहा है या उसके लिए एक ब्रीडिंग ग्राउंड बन रहा है. Research on group level factors has shown that social identity, realistic conflict between groups over resources and unequal power relations between group lead to escalation of conflict. जब आप ग्रुप लेवल पे देखोगे तो अगर किसी एक ग्रुप की सोशल आइडेंटिटी बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रांग है, रिसोर्सेज बहुत ज्यादा है, किसी एक के पास अनइक्वल पावर रिलेशन है, और ऐसे फैक्टर्स अगर एग्जिस्ट करेंगे तो इंटर ग्रुप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट और एस्केलेट होगा या और ज्यादा बढ़ेगा. जब आप इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे देखोगे तो आपके बिलीव्स, आपके एटीट्यूड, आपकी पर्सनालिटी कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स, ये इंपॉर्टेंट डिटर्मिनेंट्स बन जाते हैं. So therefore we've seen it at three levels: structural, group and individual. It has been found that at the individual level there is a progression along a continuum of violence. Very small act that initially may have no significance, like calling the other group a name, may lead to psychological changes that make further destructive action possible. अगर आप किसी को बहुत मजाक से भी कोई नाम चिढ़ाने लग जाओ तो हो सकता है you started it in fun, but gradually it can become very serious, and this can become actually a breeding ground for where conflicts start, right? So that progresses really fast at an individual level. Now, these are some of the identified consequences of intergroup conflict. क्या-क्या results हो सकते हैं, क्या-क्या consequences हो सकते हैं intergroup conflict के? पहला, communication between the group becomes poor. Of course, अगर conflict हो गया तो वो ग्रुप्स आपस में बातचीत करना बंद कर देंगे और उनका communication बहुत कम हो जाएगा. The groups do not trust each other. They will now not be able to trust each other. वो एक दूसरे पर भरोसा नहीं कर पाएंगे. Therefore, leading to a breakdown in communication, and this generates suspicion for each other. They will always be very, when it comes to working with each other or when it comes to looking at each other, they will always look the other person with an iota of doubt, right? So they will never be able to trust somebody from that group. Groups start magnifying their differences. वो जो दो groups involved हैं वो अपने आप के जो अपने बीच में जो फर्क है या जो डिफरेंसेस हैं उन्हें बड़ा समझने लग जाते हैं, एंड उन्हें ऐसा लगने लग जाता है कि वो जो भी कर रहे हैं वो सही है क्योंकि अगला ग्रुप भी उनके साथ अनफेयर तरीके से बिहेव करता है. Each side tries to increase its own power and legitimacy. हर ग्रुप अपनी पावर बढ़ाने की कोशिश करता है और अपना रीजन को ज्यादा मैग्नीफाई करने की कोशिश करता है, एंड दे ट्राई टू साउंड मोर लेजिटिमेट. As a consequence, the conflict gets escalated, shifting from few specific issues to much larger issue. अब अगर आप अपने आप को ज्यादा पावरफुल दिखाने की कोशिश करोगे तो आप बहुत सारे मुद्दों की बातें करोगे, and the more you will try to prove your point, the more the other party will get hurt, right? Therefore, the issue goes on to much larger issues than it initially was. Once conflict starts, several other factors lead to escalation of कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. एक बार लड़ाई स्टार्ट हो जाती है या एक बार कॉन्फ्लिक्ट शुरू हो जाता है तो स्टार्ट बात कहीं से होती है एंड वो किसी और भी बहुत सारे ऐसे पॉइंट्स पे, ऐसे ज्यादा चीजों पे जाके रुक सकती है, जो बहुत सारे फैक्टर्स उसमें और इंक्लूड हो सकते हैं. Hardening of in-group opinion, explicit threat directed at out-group, each group retaliating more and more, and other parties also choosing to take sides lead to escalation of conflict. बाकी groups भी फिर side लेने लग जाते हैं. When you are studying this, you can think of an election to be an example. When the elections come, you will see that the rivalry between parties increase, right? And different parties start taking sides of different parties. And they also start to throw dirt at each other, that this person did this person did that, they don't believe in the ethics of our country, XYZ, and that also shows how conflict arises or escalates. Then we come to conflict resolution strategies. तो क्या कुछ ऐसी strategies हो सकती हैं जो हम इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं to take care of these conflicts. Now, conflicts can be reduced if we know about their causes, right? Conflict हम resolve कर सकते हैं या reduce कर सकते हैं जब हम उन्हें उनका reason पता है. The processes that increase conflict can be turned around and to reduce it also. A number of strategies have been suggested by psychologists. पहला है इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ सुपर ऑर्डिनेट गोल्स, यानी आप ऐसे गोल्स सेट कर दीजिए जिसमें दोनों जो ग्रुप्स हैं जिनके बीच में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, दोनों ही वो एक कॉमन गोल अचीव करना चाहते हैं और उन्हें साथ में आकर ही वो गोल अचीव करना पड़ेगा. रिसर्च शोड दैट बाय इंट्रोड्यूसिंग सुपर ऑर्डिनेट गोल्स इंटरग्रुप कॉन्फ्लिक्ट कैन बी रिड्यूस्ड. हम पढ़ चुके हैं सुपर ऑर्डिनेट गोल्स क्या होता है इन द लास्ट चैप्टर. A superordinate goal is mutually beneficial to both parties, hence both group work cooperatively. क्योंकि दोनों को ही ये गोल अचीव करने से फायदा होगा, इसलिए दोनों पार्टी साथ में आकर ही cooperatively काम करने लग जाती हैं. And when they start working together, of course, communication will increase and they will be able to resolve the conflict. Next is altering perceptions, यानी आप इंसान के perception पे ही काम करो. Conflicts can also be reduced by altering perception and reaction through persuasion, educational and media appeals, and portrayal of groups differently in society. This is a more difficult way to go about it. क्योंकि किसी का perception change करना is not a one-day task, but of course one can try. And how can you change somebody's perception? By pursuing somebody, educational and media reports, right? Promoting empathy for others should be taught to everyone right from the beginning. So if you teach people to be more empathetic, this also can help. Then increasing intergroup contact. You can find ways in which the two group come together and they have to, and they can communicate peacefully. This can be done by involving groups in conflict on neutral grounds through community projects and events. तो आप उन्हें ऐसी चीजों में लगा सकते हैं जहां दे कैन वर्क टुगेदर, लाइक हेल्पिंग बिल्डिंग द कम्युनिटी और walking at an event together. The idea is to bring them together so that they become more appreciative of each other's stand, so that they get a chance to actually know what the other person believes in and how the other group actually is. However, for this to be successful, they need to be maintained, which means that they should be supported over a period of time. Of course, this is not a one-time thing. This effort has to be made continuously for the two groups to stay peacefully. Redrawing group boundaries. Another technique that has been suggested by some psychologists is redrawing the group boundaries. This can be done by creating conditions where group boundaries are redefined and groups come to perceive themselves as belonging to a common group. अब जैसे अगर आप इंडिया में देखो, and if you redefine Indians as Hindu and Muslims and tell them that no, this is not Hindu and Muslims, you're all Indians. If we are able to combine all the religions into one, then that would be redrawing the group boundary. It is a very difficult task, but if people try to do, or if you try to see them as humans or see us as humans together, which we belong to the Homo sapiens, species, then that also can help in solving the conflict. Then we have negotiations, right? This is also another strategy which is very used and it's very useful. This can also be resolved. Conflicts can also be resolved through negotiations and third-party intervention. So if there are two groups who have conflict, a third party can interfere, right? Like if you and your brother are fighting, your mom interferes, और आपकी वो एक तरह से संधि कराते हैं या आपकी they try to make it work. Warring groups can resolve conflict by trying to find mutually acceptable solutions. So the third party can actually look for solutions which are accepted for both the parties. This requires understanding and trust, but you have to understand and trust the third party who is coming to negotiate. But आपको ऐसा नहीं लगना चाहिए, वो पार्टी बहुत न्यूट्रल होनी चाहिए. No group should feel that they are favoring the other party. So negotiation refers to reciprocal communication so as to reach an agreement in situations in which there is a conflict. Sometimes it is difficult to dissipate conflict through negotiation. At that time, mediation and arbitration by a third party is needed. So then this was also supported by what we know as mediation and arbitration. Some very, very refined terms which fall under the umbrella of negotiation, but very slight differences. Mediators help both parties to focus their discussion on the relevant issues and reach a voluntary agreement. Mediators क्या होते हैं? जो दोनों parties का एक mediator होता है, जो उन्हें उनका focus सिर्फ relevant issues पर ही रखता है. And in arbitration, the third party has the authority to give a decision after hearing both parties. Arbitration is like a judge. So he will listen to both the people and then decide what has to be done, right? So these are three in negotiation. You can go for negotiation, mediation, or arbitration. Then we have structural solutions, right? Conflicts can also be reduced by redistributing societal resources according to principle based on justice. अगर कोई ऐसे ग्रुप्स हैं जहां बहुत ज्यादा अनफेयर या बहुत ज्यादा इनइक्वालिटी है, तो रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूट की जा सकती है रिसोर्सेज. किस बेसिस पर? उन बेसिस पर जो जस्टिस में प्रिंसिपल्स हैं. Research on justice has identified several principles of justice. कुछ ऐसे principles हैं जो exist करते हैं, जैसे equality, need, and equity. So on basis of this, we can actually redistribute some resources which can reduce conflict. Then, if people start developing respect for other groups' norm, this will itself reduce a lot of conflict. And especially in a pluralist society like India, in a secular country like India, it is necessary, very necessary to respect and be sensitive to these norms of other group member, right? Because we all have religions. In India, we have religions which all have equal, important, significant, and emotional value for the religion, right? So we all have practices that mean a lot to the person of that religion. So we have to be very sensitive and very respectful of what the other religion does or follows. It has been noticed that a number of communal riots between different groups have taken place because of such insensitivity. बहुत बड़े बड़े दंगे हो जाते हैं क्योंकि इंसान insensitive होता है किसी और religion के किसी practice की तरफ. So if this respect develops, that conflict will itself go down. So with this, we come to the end of this chapter. These were some of the strategies, right? And we finished chapter 7. So this was the last part. This was part 3. With this, I will also be putting up the notes of the chapter that you see on the screen will be shared in the Google Drive. How to access that Google Drive where you can download all these notes has already been uploaded. You can look for that video, or if possible, I'll put it, link it here and access all the notes till chapter 7. Chapter 8 and chapter 9 will go up in the next few weeks. So look out for that. Apart from this, if you have any suggestions on what else to cover in the videos, what topics you want me to cover, do you want me to make videos on PhD entrance, PhD interview, master's entrance, let me know. We will work on that. Apart from that, if you have any feedback, anything you want to put across, you're all welcome to do that. In case you like what we do here in this space, you can also like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. That would mean a lot. Till then, take care. I'll see you next with chapter 8 videos. Bye-bye.